The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Payan. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we have John Macias, CEO of Erva Edibles, along with Lisa Saunders, who is the CFO of Erva Edibles, on the show today, and I'm so delighted to have you both here. We have a lot of great things to talk about today, but before we begin, I would love to hear about both of your first cannabis experiences.
Great. I'll go first. Thanks for having us, Sarah. I'm super excited to be here and talk about all these good things. So my first experience was probably similar to a lot of people my age. I grew up in Mill Valley, a very hot tubs and peacock feathers and parents smoking weed. I was thinking the other day, when did I first realize my parents were getting high all the time? I think I was like 8 or 9. So, early 80s. And my interest was piqued, obviously. I think my first experience was in junior high. And, that was when you could smoke a joint by yourself and still be fine. And we just started, I call it the back parking lot crew. That's the one I joined. And we would get high a lot of times at school, which, in hindsight, maybe not the best idea, but that was my first experience. And then from there, as a woman, Sarah, you and I talked about the stigma around using cannabis, and I have used it and various other forms throughout my life. But for a good 20 plus years, I didn't talk about it. It wasn't something I discussed, right? It was something that I did in quiet and private, and because I didn't want to feel that stigma. Being in tech and being an executive, you have to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also, I remember back in the day being at parties, and if I wanted to smoke a joint, actually not even too long ago, it would be me and a bunch of dudes, because women if they were using it, they were using it privately. They weren't using it socially as much.
Yeah. Yeah. I many times declined participating because I was afraid of what the backlash would be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And John, how about you?
Well, for me, I'm from Colombia, and down there, marijuana was seen as very taboo, right? It wasn't until I came to the United States, I was in high school, that, it was here is more, it's more socially acceptable. And I remember it was me and my friends. You had the same throw five on it. So we would throw five on it and, get a little, what we would call back in the day, draw, right? It was like, not the mitts, but the draw, and we would like roll it up and go skip school, go skip a class, and enjoy it, and then we'll go back to class, and we did that quite a bit. So it's very nostalgic to think about those times. They're very fun times with my friends, and that's how I started into the cannabis, and ever since then I tried different various aspects of the plant in different forms. But that's how I started with my friends, with a little help from my friends.
It sounds like the three of us were in the same boat as being precocious teenagers. We probably would have. We probably all would have been hanging out in that car had we gone to school together.
Yeah. When my kids ask me, well, what crowd were you in? Were you the front parking lot? Were you the cheerleader crew? I'm like, yeah, no, that was the back parking lot. That's your mom.
I think it's good to have these conversations about this too, because we talk about teen access and youth access, and we want to make sure that that's not happening. But the fact of the matter is, kids are going to do what kids are going to do, and we have to have intelligent conversations with them so they understand, and also to demystify it, because I know for me, like, part of the allure was the taboo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
My mom never talked to me about anything like that, right? And like you're saying, education is important, right? Perhaps if I wouldn't be more educated on it, I wouldn't have been like wanting to do it so much, because the taboo, especially when you're a teenager, when you're like, oh, but why? Like it makes you curious. So I think big education in our youth is important. so we can teach them right. And it's not just with cannabis; it goes into many other aspects of like alcohol, hardcore drugs, right? The more education we give our kids, the better they will be prepared to make the right decisions. So
Absolutely. Even
it's
with like
important to
sex
think about that.
education, it's like
Mhm.
let's have some real conversations with kids so that they can have critical thought, and that's only going to serve them when they're adults as well. It's one of those things where somebody was asking me about youth access the other day, and I said, "Well, we should be talking about the fact that our brains are still developing and they develop well into our 20s. And for some of us who may have genetic predispositions to certain things, it's not to say that cannabis would trigger that, but we should be thoughtful about it and really be careful about what we're doing with, our minds when we're very young. And I think it's a hard thing for us to think about because I know at that age I was invincible and I was in a small town and I was very bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Yeah. And I talked to my kids about it early and I told them, and I was the first person they actually smoked marijuana with.
That's
I
awesome.
said, just, do it with me first, get a baseline, understand what it's about, and then let's just keep talking about it. Right. And I didn't have that with my parents, and yet they were, doing it on their own.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk to me about it at all. And it was forbidden. It was not good when I got caught.
Yeah,
So
me too. My mom
bad.
threatened juvie.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Oh, I had that a couple times. Yeah.
My mom sent me to martial academy actually, where she sent me to like some drug rehabilitation program for smoking weed, right? But again, not my mom didn't know what she doesn't know,
Right.
and I know she just doing it for love, right? But again, going back to the education, my mom didn't know, she wasn't educated on it, so she was just trying to do the best for her kid, and so that's why important is to educate people. We try to do that in our company with our blogs. It's important that we educate, especially with edibles, like people, edibles they hit stronger, right? You metabolize it different. So going back to education, there's people that don't know how strong edibles are and they eat a lot and they can be very intense for some people. So
Absolutely. Well, and especially when, there are the horror stories. What was it? Maureen Dowd did that horrible, horrible experiment in Colorado with that strong brownie. And as a journalist, I was like, so you didn't do any research on milligrams and dosage. You just took it just to do this piece that was like the worst piece of investigative journalism that I've ever seen, which made a whole bunch of people afraid of edibles because, sure, when you have a homemade edible, you can have a really bad experience because you
mhm.
don't know how many milligrams there are in there. And that was one of the biggest things when I worked in a dispensary that people would look at the edibles page and they'd be like, I don't even want to go near there. I'm like, no, wait, let's pause for a second. You don't have to, but let me give you some information to consider for the next time that you might come visit. You can use really low dosage edibles and you can get some really wonderful effects. The window of release is longer, and in many ways that ends up being, from a financial standpoint, a much better choice as well. And for some of us, inhaling cannabis is not where it's at. And after like kind of having those conversations, because like some people even were like, well, I had a bad experience on LSD and I don't want that to happen again. I'm like, well, I can promise you that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
really just about having more information and having more thoughtful use. And I think as we've had more conversations about that, people are less afraid of edibles, especially because we do have a lot of low dose options. And we're having more conversations about creating that framework for people to figure out their dosage. And then they realize how efficient it is and how pleasant it can be. And actually, how incredibly portable and convenient edibles can be for use as well.
Yeah. I was just going to say that the portability and, with I travel a lot for work, right? I can't be bringing joints with me, right? And so it's important for me to be able to continue my therapy, whatever it is, right? I use THCV during the day, right?
Hmm.
That helps me focus, right? I need to be able to keep doing that even when I travel, and you can't do it with a joint, you
No,
can't. So it's
no.
nice to be able to have that. So portability is a big deal.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I made the gummies, the milligrams they are, is because I used to work for a company called Wana Edibles in Colorado, and they had this thing called the Big Dog, and that thing was like 200 milligrams, and I ate two of those. And man, that was, again, because I wasn't educated on it, right? I was just making them, and that's when I decided. I was like, okay, yeah, nobody needs to 400 milligrams. This is way too much. And so I came up with the idea of the gummies and make them really low milligrammage. That's why, in our formulation, in our line of products, we had different formulations, and some of them are like only 1 milligram THC for people that are very sensible to it. We want to give people the power to be able to dose themselves to the right amount of what their body requires, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody's different. And I know people that they eat like 1 milligram and they get pretty stoned out of that. And I also met people that they need really high doses, like really high, like 50, 100 for them to be able to enjoy it, right? So we try to here at the company, we try to formulate different edibles to give people the power of that. And it's important to educate them. And that's why we're really proud of our blogs and the blogs that we try to put out. And it's always been important for us to do is just having a really good information for everybody. And we will always carry that. And for the rest of when we're in business is creating good content, creating good information and good education for the people.
It's important. And I think, to what you were saying about dosage, most of us need what would be considered a small to moderate dosage. But I also think it's really important to have the conversation that we do have people who need larger amounts of THC to be able to get the results that they need, especially when you're dealing with people who are critically and chronically ill. Like, there was this one woman that I used to come into the store all the time. She was a retired librarian, and if you saw her, you would never even know that she used cannabis. But she would need, 200 milligrams in her edibles for her pain management, what she was dealing with medically. And I think that it's really important for people to understand that that may not be an appropriate dosage for the majority of our population, but we also need to make sure that we have safe access for people so that they don't have to eat, a whole bag of gummies to get what they want, especially because, when you're dealing with things like health issues, you're really trying to minimize a lot of the sugars and things like that. And they aren't necessarily going to be attracted to using like, a concentrated oil. It, and they aren't really available as much. But we do need to have some brands that are doing some of this, and it's not going to be something that takes up a lot of shelf space because, as we know, there aren't a ton of people who need them. But there are some, and I'd rather have them using that than things like opiates. It's
100%.
Yeah.
incredibly dangerous. But like you said, for the majority of the population, we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 10 milligrams for an average dose. And that's a really safe place for people to be. I just had Dr. Benjamin Kaplan on the podcast, and we were talking about edibles, and I was talking to him about some of the people that I've worked with who can eat all the edibles, it seems like, and not feel anything, and how that might be linked to liver function. And he was saying that he's actually worked with some people who've had issues with that too. But for him, what he noticed was that it was extraordinarily high doses of THC that started to bring on the effects that they were looking for. And I thought, wow, the idea of that for me just like kind of, I mean, I get it and it makes perfect sense, but like like thinking about myself, I would be just tripping if I
Yeah.
had
Oh
that
man.
much.
Yeah. We just, interestingly, you bring that up. And I think we talked about this, Sarah, that we, in my data collecting, which we do all the time, we talk to dispensaries, we talk to, our consumers and users. And one of the common themes that we were hearing was that people who are using edibles as their primary product are finding that they need to your point, take more because their tolerance is now higher, right? And they don't want to eat an entire bag of gummies, and it's not, cost effective to do that, right? It's cost prohibitive.
Hmm.
So we actually have a new product coming out. We developed a new product that is a 50 milligram gummy that has, you can cut it into portions.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, because we it's what the consumers want, right? They want a little more freedom and flexibility on, I'll say, dosing, right?
Yeah.
And reducing the sugar and, all of that. And so,
It's
yeah.
It's
important to listen to the patients, and what they require. And I like to say that we make decisions based on data. Really listening to your people is what will really help you create products that will help them, right? And so talking to many dispensaries and the bud tenders are our best friends. They have all the data, and they had talked. We talked to a lot of them. A lot of them were like, we don't see our products that are high milligrammage. That's what people really are looking for. Some of them, of course, not all of them. So we decided to come up with this new product. And it's not just for the people, like you were saying, for people that are also sick. Some of these people, I have a big, I have a heart for these people. And I have a friend of a friend that I was just getting him free gummies because he was terminally ill, and anything I can do to just make him feel better is it makes me happy, right? So I want to also have products that can help people in those situations, at least ease their pain a little bit, right? It's important, at the end of the day, cannabis is our medicine, and some people use it recreationally, but let's not forget also about the people that need it medically, for medicine and to help them with their lives and their pain. So we are really excited about this new product. It's called the Double Dose. Um, it's coming out in a few weeks, and yeah, it's gonna be great to see what the feedback we get from it. So we're really excited about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It makes me so happy to see products that are a little bit more on the adjustable dosage side, and then all it takes is just education so people understand that they shouldn't, if they have a lower tolerance, they don't need to take, and then they shouldn't take more than they need. I agree. There's, as we get into legalization, it seems like the medicinal side gets pushed more and more by the wayside, especially because I think from a compliance and a legal standpoint, people are a little bit afraid to dip their toes in that. It just seems much easier and much more easy on the compliance side to stay firmly in the adult recreational market. But that makes it harder for the people that we actually pass these laws for. The reason that we can do our jobs every day is because there were people who needed to have a medicinal option in cannabis and to be able to do it legally without getting arrested. And so I really applaud companies that don't forget that and that, hold the space for it. Of course, we have another market that we have to speak to as well. But the fact of the matter is when we get into legalization, people were thinking, oh, well, medicinal's going to go away. Everyone wants to come in and get high. But what we were actually seeing were more people that hadn't wanted to get a recommendation for cannabis were nervous about having the conversation with their physician. But now that they can come in and get it, they're like, well, can I use it for sleep? Can I use it for relaxation? I've got a sore shoulder. What can I use for that? And I think that, our regulators need to understand that more people are coming in and using it to create homeostasis in their lives than they are getting sky high. So there is, even though we're not labeling it a medicinal application, people are using it for wellness. And that's actually the biggest market that a lot of companies are forgetting about, especially when we're looking at dispensaries, especially the larger dispensaries. And I'm not going to say all of them. And for those of you listeners who work for MSOs who are listening out there, I'm not bagging on you. It's really about, the fact that there needs to be more critical thought around the fact that not everyone's a stoner. Your average recreational user isn't just getting sky high. And if you are just catering to that very niche audience, and it's a rich part of our history, and I'm not bagging on them either, but you're missing a whole swath of the marketplace that could use your help and guidance. And
Yeah,
it would be
100%.
amazing if we could reach them all. And the way that we do that is through education and conversation and
Yeah.
normalization and having really adult, intelligent conversations about dosage and the fact that even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, not everyone tolerates phytocannabinoids, and that's all right. It's
Yeah.
okay to be different. Just because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean that it won't work for someone else. And when people used to come in and see me and say they're curious about cannabis because they had a friend who had these chocolate covered blueberries that helped her sleep, I'd be like, that's wonderful. That's starting the conversation. But now let's talk about what might work for you.
You. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, like we were talking about. That's what we're pretty. I'm very proud of the line of products that we do because when I was, formulating the product when I first started, I went around to many dispensaries. I have friends, and I was like, what are people really looking for? What kind of formulations, right? And we have 5 different formulations right now, and a lot of people, our best sellers are sleep formulation, right? Because people, I have noted looking at the data, a lot of people have hard time sleeping, and it makes me happy when people eat the Erva edibles and they're like, "Oh, this is helping me sleep so much better. Thank you so much." And it's those, that's why I got into it. That's why I made these formulations because it makes me happy. My dad's a doctor, my mom's a nurse, and just being, I always love the human body and being able to supply this medicine and help people makes me incredibly proud. And I just want to keep doing that for the people. Um, we want to keep doing, everybody's, it's all about the people. It's about the consumer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why we always say that we make decision based on data because it's for them, right? It's what we can do best for our people, for our consumers. So yeah, it's exciting to add all these different formulations, and that's what we're gonna keep doing. That's the model of the business that we have. It's not just about getting high, it's about helping people, helping achieve, like you said, homeostasis in their life. For some other people, it's not the sleeping; they need the CBG, right, to focus, to see, to better have a better day, right,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to concentrate, right. So for some other people, CBD helps them, right. So we have CBD low T 1-to-1 ratio that helps them, right. So very exciting, and we will keep. We're also thinking about different formulas that we're gonna be bringing out. Yeah, I've always been very passionate about the different formulas that you can make with different cannabinoids. Uh, like you just saying, everybody's different. What works for somebody doesn't work for the next person.
Right. You have to have a wide swath. And John, I have a question for you. Being that you have two parents that are in the health sciences
Hmm.
and you love to geek out on data, what was their impression when you decided to get into the cannabis business? How do they feel about it then versus now? Because my mom is a nurse, and the change through the years as she kind of saw how things, their trajectory, it changed enormously. And so I'm curious to see what your family's impression
It's
was.
actually really funny that because I mean, as I was telling you earlier, my mom sent me to the martial act to me to a rehab center for a week, right? And again, it was because she wasn't educated, right? She
Right.
didn't know what she didn't know. As I got more into the industry, I was able to educate her and show her, like, Mom, it's not just what you see on TV. It's not what people tell you. Let me teach you more about it. And nowadays, she's very understandable. She understands a lot more than what she used to. She no longer sees it as taboo. I was able to show her that it can be used as a medicine, right? It doesn't mean that she participates on it. She's an old school Colombian woman that is very set on her ways. But I do appreciate the turnaround that she has made, that she has come to understand again. And this is funny because through education, what we've been talking about, that it can be good for people. And so nowadays she tolerates it, but she doesn't partake. And I don't think I could ever convince her to partake, but she tolerates it. And when me and her talk about it, like, I tell her how it can help people. She's incredibly proud of what we are doing here at Erva, and that makes me really happy. Same with my dad. My dad was a general doctor in Colombia, which back in the day, they did everything, right? Um, and same with my dad. He now understands how he can help different people. I tried to get him to take some for his knee, but He was very, he's still like very set on his weight as well. But again, he tolerates it and he can see the benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also interesting how culture comes into the stigma as well, because I had a dear friend, his family is from Mexico, and they were very anti-cannabis, but his grandma had a jar of weed under the bed that was like soaked in alcohol that she would use for her as a topical for her knee. But they saw it as a very different thing because, that was
Hmm.
something that was culturally like, this is what we do. This is how it's used. This isn't something that's smoked. This is something that's used as a topical to help with pain management. And it was almost looked at as a separate substance. And I'm like, that's the same thing, right? Well, we don't talk about that.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
And
Yeah.
you don't argue with a Latin mama.
No.
No, you don't. Oh,
No,
I
no,
learned
no.
that very early in my life.
I mean, I think that Sarah, to your point, I would like to see more the word wellness used. I don't think it's used as much as I would like to see it because it is wellness, right? In lots of ways. And I think that we really need to focus on the wellness of it. And, but like I said, one of my very, very good friends is an oncologist. And before we formulated the double dose, I spoke to her as well because she has a different market, right? That I wanted to understand. Would this be interesting to you and to your patients, right? And she said 100%. But I wanted to understand that better because we don't just formulate new products for one market, right? I
Right.
need to know the whole addressable market before I make a decision like that.
Right. And I think one of the beautiful things with the cannabinoids is that they they serve a wide swath of things that are going on. Especially like, when people will talk about, THC being like the recreational fun time cannabinoid. It's like, well, it actually gets people eating. It's great for pain management. It helps with nausea. In certain applications, it can be an antispasmodic, although CBD, it can be, much more efficient with things like that. And, you can have one product that does a lot of different things. And we're constantly learning more about what they do and they don't do. Because, like, when I think about when I first started, there was a lot of conversations that were considered more like folk medicine. And some of them ended up being highly incorrect. And some of them ended up being right on when we started getting into more of the research. And I think that's one of the things that I know some people might find that frustrating, but I find it fueling because I'm like, okay, I learn something new every day. And, if somebody, introduces me as a cannabis expert, I'm like, there are no experts. Do I know more than your average bear? Absolutely. Do I know everything? Absolutely
No.
not. But that's part of the
Research,
beauty.
research
Mhm.
is still very young, I mean, medicine takes decades of research to get really right. And like cannabis research wasn't allowed, until like very recently. So what? They've been doing research for maybe 10 years, maybe 20, like real research, right? And everybody's different, everybody's body's different, and I'm very excited for all the research that is to come as well, because that really helps us understand and create new better products for everybody, right? Um, there's a lot of research going on. There's a lot of different things happening right now. Now you have this Delta 9 stuff, Delta 8, and they're making synthetic cannabinoids, which, I'm not gonna say I'm a huge fan of synthetic stuff, but again,
Same.
I'm not too educated on it, so I'm not really gonna say no to it. But I think anything and everything natural is always better. And we had a conversation about all these cannabinoids, and we took a at the company. We decided we would never try to do any synthetic stuff. We're all about being very natural, and we will try to stick to all the nat. We will stick to all the natural cannabinoids, right? Um, but it's interesting talking back about research is just look how many new things are coming out because of the research is what we're being able to do now, right? So it's very interesting to see where this will all take us. I mean, the industry today is so different from the industry just like 5 years ago, right? Everything changes. I mean, even the extraction methods have changed. it seems like every 6 months there's a new extraction method, right? It's hard to keep up with it, and but it's interesting that people are able to find all these new ways to play with, to play with cannabis and create new products, and it's empowering, and
Hmm.
I'm really excited to see what's to come with all the research. Hopefully I'm hoping that more research is done into the medicinal part because, like you said, once recreational started, it's like medicinal almost. It's like people just didn't even care about medicinal anymore, and I think that should always be the more where we should be more concentrated because that's what like you were talking about is what started the whole thing, right? And we want to always remember the real good part of cannabis is helping people and making them feel better.
Yeah, I often wonder if sometimes people who looked at medicinal cannabis before, because I have to say that before I used it with cancer and met people who were affected positively by medicinal cannabis use, I used to joke. I was like, yeah, puff puff, I'm using it for my glaucoma. That old chestnut. But then you start to see that like no, people actually are using it, and I think that a lot of people who got into the adult use market, not all, but some of them really did buy into the fact that it was just a loophole to create access, and it wasn't, and it isn't. And there are still people that are using it that way, and there will be, and I think there will be more because I can't tell you how many people in my career I've worked with who have stopped, along with using, talking to their physician at the same time, have gone off of opiates or lowered their opiate usage, um, lowered or taken out altogether the use of benzodiazepines, things like that can cause greater harm in the long term. And it's really important that we do continue these conversations and also have conversations about the rich history so people don't forget because there's a lot of erasure going on, not only from the medicinal side, but also the cultural side because we look at representation in cannabis and the fact that cannabis has a rich culture in almost every single culture in the world. And that's something that we can't discount. And it's also something that stigma has tried to take from us as well. Like even when we look at like say like Chinese culture right now, cannabis is a very taboo thing for Chinese elders because of the impacts of colonization and the opium wars. But, when we look at Chinese medicine, they use the seeds and the roots, and it was part of the pharmacopoeia before we were dealing with stigma around it. And so, really having those nuanced, intelligent conversations about the fact that this is a plant that we have had one of the oldest symbiotic relationships with cultivation and use, whether we were ingesting it or using the fibers for rope or what have you. It's been here, it will stay here, and there's no reason to stigmatize it. We should be using it because if we had been using it all the many different ways that it's available for, there are a lot of issues that we wouldn't be dealing with today with health and environment and a lot of that. And going into culture, erva, what does that mean and how did you come up with that?
Okay, so Erva is actually Italian. It's an Italian word, and it means like weed in Italian.
Oh, right on.
Uh, yeah, it's like a slang, right? So I wanted to something that it's like had a subliminal message, right?
Hmm.
And yerba in Colombian means in slang means like weed, right? So I always wanted something that like kind of meant like kind of like gave the meaning of weed, but without saying weed or cannabis on the title. And so that's how I came up with Erva. And I just thought I always, I'm Colombian, so I like to roll my R's. So I always thought Erva sounded really nice. And that's how I came out with that. Oh, and obviously, about like I said, always about data. So I came up with a bunch of different names. And honestly, I just let my friends and families decide. I did like an Instagram poll, and we would take names out, and eventually, Erva is really what everybody's favorite name, and that's how it came to be for the name.
That's awesome. It rolls off the tongue so nicely.
Yeah,
It's very
Erva.
elegant.
I like it. Yeah, I like it too. It's been it's been great. My mom loves the name as well, so she was big part on choosing the name. My dear mama, like she,
See,
it's funny because she probably would have never known that she would be a big decisive factor in a marijuana edible company, but here we are, and she is.
yeah, I understand that. I had the conversation with my mom, and she's when I first got into it, I was going back to school after cancer, and so she just kind of discounted it as Sarah's post-cancer slash midlife crisis. We'll just go with it, And then after a while, she was like, "So you're really committed to this. You're not going back into the office." And my mother's an oncology, hematology nurse, and cancer researcher, and so she'll tell you she never told me to use cannabis, but she understood the importance of THC to help through the chemo journey. And now, even though she won't partake, she understands the importance, which is funny because I found out when I was younger, she did partake. I just didn't know. Although she didn't
Oh.
allow my father to because she said he was no fun. He would just kind of lay there,
Good for her.
right? She took charge. She made it happen.
That's right.
That-
That's good. Yeah, I think, Sarah, that it's important to understand that um, the need for more women in cannabis is important, right? And
Yes.
it's you and I've talked a lot about this, and I come from tech background, as you know, similar to yourself, and I have, over the last 6 months, I'll say transitioned to cannabis, and it's something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. It's a hard industry to get into,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important to be able to make that shift without the stigma, right? And I've had people, I'm a consultant as well. I'm an executive coach to, tech CEOs and been in tech for 20 years. And I've had people ask me, well, since when are you so into pot? And I'm like, well, it's not that, but there's the stigma, right? Like, since when did you get into cannabis? I'm like, well, okay. Are you ever coming back to tech? Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm
Why not
enjoying
both?
this. Yeah, I'm growing and this is a good thing. Does this mean I'm going to be a cultivator? Nope. Nope, not not going to happen. But I'm learning, and that's, as a lifelong learner, it's important to be able to make that switch without um, having the judgments. And there are a lot of people I haven't shared it with for that exact reason.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I was able to see it's like we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago and how the industry is very broski industry, there's not a lot of women in the executive positions, and it's important to have them up in the executive decision because they're a driving factor in the industry, and that's why I'm really happy to have Lisa because she helps me see a new perspective that I'm not able to see. I'm a man, right? I haven't gone through the same things that a woman that I had to go through life, right? So it's really important to I'm really happy and very proud to have her next to me to help me with the decisions because she mentors me, she helps me, and without her, we probably would not be making the best decisions that Erba can make, right? Having different views is really important. And I'm hoping, as life goes on, and even though we can see it now, women in through history have always had such a hard time. And I know there's still a long way to go, but I'm hoping to be a little bit of help. So it's really important for Erva to have a big diversity in our whole institution, in our whole organization. So I just want to thank Lisa for being my mentor and my friend and helping me drive the company to the next level. We're really excited with all the decisions we have made in the last couple months that we believe is gonna really put everybody in the next level with our upcoming products, different things that are coming up, some secret things that I cannot tell you about that we have planned and we are planning to do in the near future. And a lot of these things are thanks to Lisa being there. And so I just wanna mention that I hope in the next future in the near future more women are able to come into power in the industry to help us drive it to the future, right? It's a still evolving industry, and we need more women in power.
I
I think it's
agree. I agree. I think when we were in the 215 days in California, and for those of you who aren't listening, California 215 was our medicinal cannabis time. There was a lot more female leadership that was happening. And it was something that we were even seeing articles about the fact that in the cannabis industry, we were seeing much more female leadership. And I think part of it was that, women are drawn to more holistic health, looking at the options, herbalism, things like that. Granted, there are always a lot of men that were involved in the industry, especially when we were dealing with like high risk. And, it's like if you have a family who's, probably, a mom might be involved somehow, but she's not going to be out running packs, things like that. But as we're starting to get into this legal market, we're starting to see the same frameworks that we see in other corporate areas where it's very male focused. And I think it's a big mistake. I mean, when we look at cannabis, it's an opportunity for us to create critical thought around a lot of things beyond cannabis and around leadership and innovation. And when we look at the fact that women's bodies are different from men, and we see that reflected in regular research in medicine and research in cannabis, where most of the time the models that are being used are with male bodies. And that is something that we need to change significantly. And also the fact that, and this isn't to say that there are lots of lovely, thoughtful men out there that are creating wonderful things, but men and women should be working together, and we should really be looking at having more of a female lens on it because it is seriously lacking. And I think that, especially women in leadership, it's a really important thing. And I also think that with the lack, when we are working in a space where there isn't a lot of room for women in leadership, it also causes a rift between women's relationships with one another, because then there's this very unhealthy competition that does not need to happen. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room where you want it to be more about sisterhood and you start feeling really alone. And that's not right, because we should be helping each other. We should be supporting each other. And granted, I'm the last girl you'll ever see in a sorority. But I do love and value my female friends, and I think we have a lot to share with one another, and we have a lot of things, a lot of good things that we can put out into the world. Not knocking sororities. I'm not doing that. But I was definitely more of an outlier. But it is, and in that note, I'm always so grateful for the wonderful women that I meet that are doing really cool things and breaking the barriers. And it's a lot different than when I first started working in business, where it was way worse. And when we were dealing with things like sexual harassment and not being able to make it to the next level, and some dudes like getting some management job that you were totally fit for, and he doesn't even know what the job is, but he got it anyway. It's like there's just a lot that we need to unpack around this. And the fact is that, whether you're male or female, it's about how you work together and what your vision is and how to create a more compassionate way to create abundance and wonderful products. That's the biggest thing. Like, how do we all work together, and how do we see the value? And I really look at, like, when people be like, oh, you're a feminist, blah blah blah. It's like, well, no, it's more about the fact of let's let creative minds flow. Let's work together. I don't want to have to act like a hard ass to get places. And I know a lot of wonderful men who would prefer not to do that too. They just want to be themselves and feel what they feel and have honest, heartfelt conversations with one another and get shit done.
Yeah, I like that teamwork. We were just talking about that, like when you work together as man and woman, more is achieved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a point of view, but you have a point of view, and when you combine both those points of view, you get the grand point of view, right? So it's really important to really do teamwork. Um, I'm really proud about how
Mhm.
we work together because I really think we work really well together with teamwork. I'm always asking Lisa about her opinion. I mean, but she probably annoying. I'm always texting her about something on her opinion of everything because it's really important to me to get that, because again, making those decisions is just it's based on everybody's way of view. And if I make decisions just on my way of view, that's just terrible decision making. We wouldn't get anywhere, right? So it's really important to have teamwork. Um,
We call it the better together story.
yes.
And
Yeah.
and we are
Yeah,
better together. And I think that that needs to be a talk track. It needs to be not competition. There's no competition, right? That's not, we're not here to claw our way. You and I have experienced that, Sarah, in our careers, not only in tech but in cannabis. And I'm
Hmm.
new to this 9 months, but I've run into it. It's it's not great. It's shocking, but also, not something I'm completely surprised. But I've been fighting it as well, right? But you, that better together story is something that we need to be talking about more. And there's so much to learn from each other. And there's a whole market that addresses female needs, and in wellness that has not been touched,
that's true.
because they don't know.
Like you were talking about like how the female body is different, it's important to take that into account, making products, and that's why it's important to have people like women in power. I'm a man. I don't know what it's like to have a female body or how my body reacts different to cannabinoids. So it's just really important to have that opinion and that like I said, woman in power to help us make the right decisions to really market the and to create the products that are essential for women, And I think it's important.
Yeah.
Most people just don't think about it that way, but I'd like to think that I do, you know.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. John is very open to that and lets me be creative in that side, right? Like I said, I'm not going to be a cultivator. Am I going to know? Do I have cannabis chops? No. I'll be the first one to say I do not. I have been told by some of my male friends that I need to, and I challenge that. I need to know enough, but I don't need to have, deep knowledge to do what I do, right? And to bring something to the table. I bring a rich background of executive leadership and operations and product development and those things that are valuable, right? And you know, it's
Yeah,
important.
it is, and it's something I think that we have to have more conversations to thoughtfully unpack because we have people who are very knowledgeable about cannabis who've been in the space for a long time. And some of them do have very good business acumen, but we can't be everything. And so to have people coming from other areas with their expertise to lend to this to create more successful outcomes is incredibly important. I think the most important thing is when people are coming with their other experiences that they do understand to let people shine where they need to. I think the wise person surrounds himself with experts. You know that you don't know everything about everything. So, you have great business acumen. Then you have your people who understand cannabis and how it works. You work together to create solutions because you need all lenses on deck to create great products and sustainable companies. And that's where the magic happens. Because what I see sometimes when people are coming from corporate is they are bringing a lot of the bad habits that didn't work there to this area. And it's having the wisdom to understand that we don't need to do that. Bring your skills, bring your talents, help us make this stronger, be a part of it, and understand that there's a lot of toxicity in the place that you just left and don't bring it here. Because we are seeing a lot of that, especially in the large scale, institutions here. And it's a very, it does not, okay, I just got to ask you because it reminds me of tech. Does it remind you of
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
once
absolutely.
the big companies go public and stuff like that, and all this money is involved, it's like it almost feels like it feels like very techy
Yeah.
industry, you know. Um, and so I'm happy. You know, one of the best decisions I really have done since I started the company was really to bring Lisa in. She's done a wonderful job at not bringing any of those toxic traits that a lot of tech companies have. She's just brought great wisdom that has, I mean, tremendously helped the company. And we talk about how we can help, you know, as the future goes, as we grow, how we are never gonna be like those companies. What can we do for our employees? Well, how can we make this the best place to work? Something I always told her, even from the beginning, is that a happy employee is a good employee.
Yeah.
And we wanna make sure that it's a value that I feel very strong about. And I always ask her, don't let me ever fall into those holes that these big tech companies grow. Like, always remind me to be humble. And I always ask her, and she know it comes from my heart. You know, it's something that I always say, you know, and I always want to take care of our employees because they are the ones driving the company. And that's always something that I want is to never, like you said, not let that toxicity from big companies come into ours, right? But I think I have somebody that definitely will
Yeah.
keep me in line.
And
Yeah.
vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
There.
being an executive coach, I surround my CEOs with the people that bring them up. That's my job,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That's my job, right? And to know your blind spots is a good thing. Vulnerability around that and understanding that and having the self-awareness of those blind spots makes you a better leader, and it makes the company very focused on people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
your individual, what you bring in as an individual to the company, right? I always say I want people to bring a little bit of themselves to my company because that helps the culture grow, right? It helps us evolve. I
Yeah.
don't think culture should be stagnant, right? It needs to grow.
That's it. The best people that I've ever worked for have always valued the contributions of their employees. And when you have that kind of buy-in, your employees have a sense of ownership of what they do. And I know for me, like the best bosses I've ever had, I would go through hoops of fire for. It's really just, you're like, you're good to them, you trust them, you see your employees as contributors to your success, and in turn, they will be excellent caretakers of what you do. They'll make sure that there isn't loss. They'll make sure that there's innovation. They, as collectively, I know, like for me, when we were, just when I was working for the company that I was working for over a decade, when we were very small and we were all working together, everybody looked out for one another to make sure that everything was efficient and everybody was working up to their fullest potential. And there's a great amount of strength and power in that kind of cohesive team effort in a company. And it's something that some larger companies have been able to sustain, but by and large, as we start to get larger and larger and different leadership comes in, that often falls by the wayside because it's more about the quick buck and looking at the bottom line and not looking at the big picture around sustainability and creating an environment where there will be more abundance. Because when we start to get into more formulaic ways of looking at things and seeing people as more of a number, like when I was working in operations and I was going back to school, I left working in operations to go back to school, and that's how I got into cannabis. But I was going back to school for organizational psychology. I was going to get my master's, and I already had the name of my thesis. There's nothing human in human resources.
That's
Because
Yeah.
interesting.
it
Yeah, it's
was
true.
just like, okay, so we're here to make sure the company doesn't get sued.
Yeah.
What about it being the area where we cultivate people's talents and create support, because that only benefits us in the end? And
It
that's one of the
really
things that
does.
we're seeing in cannabis that's changing too, is the fact that, people will say, oh, bud tenders, the turnover is high, it's too expensive to train them, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, guess what? If you train people well and you treat them with respect and you give them opportunities for professional development and to move up in the company eventually, or perhaps they learn so much that they actually spread their wings and fly off to somewhere else, it only reflects well on you. It's only a good thing. It's you're only as strong as your employees. And if you've got people who feel like they're trusted and they're able to grow and they're enthralled with what they're doing, they stay.
Yeah. And I think that, you and I talked about this, Sarah, and I actually am going to drop a blog in the next couple of days about that, exactly that. The turnover is ridiculous in this industry. It's absurd. I don't think people understand the cost of turnover. Really, they need to understand that better.
They do.
And that there's an opportunity for them to really step up, and turnover will decrease to, it'll almost diminish if you start treating people, like humans.
It will. And the misconceptions of the way people treat retail workers really pisses me off, quite honestly, because it's and I honestly believe, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, when we're kids and we do retail or service positions, we aren't sure how we're supposed to be treated because we're kids and we get treated like crap anyway. I think every adult should go back and do a service job and see what it's like. Because when I went back into a dispensary and I started seeing how people treated me just because I was on one side of the bar, and I'm a highly educated woman, that was eye-opening.
Yeah.
That was eye-opening, and I did everything to correct that. Yeah. And it's one of those things where we really need to flip the script on that, because doing retail and doing sales is a skill, and it's a viable job. It can be a career. And the reason people don't do that is because they aren't paid enough and they aren't treated well. And if they were, these companies would be making money hand over fist, because those are your evangelists.
Yeah, I mean, going back, like, it's sad the way companies treat their employees. Like you were saying, as companies get bigger, they just see employees as numbers, and that to me is totally not okay. And I have managed a lot of different people, and I always care for them. I like to say that I'm proud of my management skills, that I care for the employees. I always feel like I always have. They're a person, they're not a number, and I will say it again. I will always say a happy employee is a good employee. We were talking about it. When they feel cared for, they will work for you. They will help you. They will care for the product. If they're making the gummies, they'll make sure the gummies made correctly, right? I suppose if they're not happy coming to work, why should they care about if the gummy comes out good or not? They're just there because they don't feel cared for. And especially in retail, as you were saying, if your employer doesn't show appreciation, why would you care about treating, how these people treat you bad? Why would you care about it? Obviously, there is a high turnover on these jobs, and I think it is the mission, and it's the responsibility of the executives and the owners to really just to flip the script, like you're saying, to really start caring more about our employees. And it's not just in the marijuana industry. It's just I see it all over in every industry. It's just it's our responsibility to really flip that script. Let's start treating people like they're people, right? Let's start caring for them. It's a very capitalism thing of 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 the country to just, oh, let's make them more money and more money and more money, and at the cost of what? Of the happiness of your employees. That really needs to change, and I'm really really passionate about that. And everybody's just but a small company, but it takes small companies to really start making the change.
Absolutely. And I think, when we look at, the way we hire, it's like one bad hire can change a whole culture. So being careful about how you hire, and if somebody isn't working out and it's a difference in culture, figuring out how to back out of that, looking at the fact that management is an aptitude, not a reward, because we have a lot of bad managers out there that screw things up in companies, and it's unfortunate. It's like, well, we have to look at ways to reward people who do not have aptitudes as managers, but are really good at what they do, because a lot of that is, creates the health or, whatever it is, whether it's healthy or not, of the workplace. And that's what we're seeing a lot In cannabis, and especially like when we are looking at like, bro culture in cannabis, it's like how many men are getting made manager versus women in the industry, and how many women are getting their management positions because they're having to behave with a lot of the toxic traits that are rewarded to become managers. And we really need to like redefine what all of this is and look at it through a different lens, because people are like, well, why isn't this working? It's like, well, it's been broken a really long time. Why aren't we having more conversations about this?
Yeah. In my role, I have lots of opportunities to advance people into management roles. I have a required reading list that anyone who comes to me and says, I want to, I'm looking to move into a management position. It's not for everyone. And it's not a promotion. It's a career change a lot of times for people, right? It's a big leap. So, there's a required reading list and weekly one-on-ones with me before I ever allow that to happen, because I don't want them to fail.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's bad for me and them, right?
Mm-hmm. And the rest of your employees.
Yeah. And many have come to me afterwards and said, thank you very much. Here's all your books. I'm good. And that is totally okay, right? And there's people I've approached and said, hey, I see something there. And they're like, no, it's give you a chance, and have thrived, right, in that role. So it requires nurturing.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's nurturing, it's talent. I always joke that, a management job, especially like when you're younger, you're like, oh, hey, that sounds great. And I can't remember, and I should know this, I can't remember if it's Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn where they're like whitewashing the fence and they're like, oh, it's really fun, come do it. And I feel like that's like what management is, being like, oh, I'm going to be a manager, I'm going to have all this power and it's going to be really great. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, I'm responsible for all these people and the outcome of all of this. And if this doesn't work out, it's ultimately on me. This is not fun. This was not a reward, but an amazing manager that actually is given, the power to support and create wonderful internal, organizations and cohesive teams is something to be treasured. And we do see some good models of this, and those are the ones I think that we should be having more conversations about, because it perpetuates itself. When you have people coming out of those models, they bring that with them, and that's one of the key things to getting rid of toxicity in the workplace. Because if we're spending 8+ hours of our life in a place, we should be engaged. We should be having buy-in. We should want where we're working to succeed and have good relationships with our coworkers and not feel like we're crabs in a barrel crawling over one another. And, we, like you said, we see this in a lot of industries, but especially right now in cannabis, where it's a hard time for everybody. It's a hard time to survive. I lovingly refer to it as the cage match for relevancy. We can create a cohesive environment where people learn and grow, or we can create immense toxicity that will go out into the rest of the world. And what choice do we want to make? How do we want to show up?
Yeah,
100%. And it's us, we have the power to create those changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
you have to have courage too. It takes courage to do that, right? It's not, you step up, and I have been many times not welcomed. My thought, my process, my ethos has not been appreciated, right? And yet it's made huge. When I do get buy-in, it can transform, your entire company.
Absolutely.
Right? And people just have a hard time seeing it sometimes. It's
do.
Scary. Change is scary.
Change is scary, but wouldn't it be interesting, Lisa, if you were coming up with that and you were a man? Would you wonder how it would be received? You'd be a heck of a leader, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would have. I'd be in a different position than I am. It's been a crawl and a scraping to get to where I have. But
it's wonderful that the two of you have found each other, and that's how it's supposed to work. People are supposed to work together and value the lenses. That's what we're going for when we look at, whether it's, between the sexes or representation or being seen. These are all things that there's so many amazing people that bring so many amazing things to the table. And the differences between us all are what create that and are beautiful. It's not about us being all the same. It's about our unique voices and what we bring to the table to create a richer conversation and more compassion. And I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And as we're wrapping up, what are some things that you're excited about in the future and things that you're hopeful about?
I'll start. I think that I'm going to touch on the, more diversity in the industry. I wrote a blog recently that I mentioned you in, about women in cannabis, right? And the need for that and the rich history that we bring, right? Because I don't think many people understand where, as you touched on, that where cannabis started, right? It's been a long time. And mostly women have been at the catalyst of that. But I would like to see more women in cannabis. I would like to see more community. I think that that's the right word, that we need to be a community together. We can do amazing things. And I think that there's an endless possibility there, but we need to be open to bringing more people to the table and more perspectives, more innovation will happen. The sky's the limit, and we really could go to the moon if we gave ourselves the chance to.
I'm really excited to just create a culture within our company, within the industry where, women, men, we're all treated equally. We all have respect of our celebrated for our different lenses, where we work together as a team. And being able to be a part of flipping the script. And, I've always, whenever we go to dispensary, me and Lisa go together, and it should, by doing this, it helps us show even other dispensaries or wherever we go, working together, a man and a woman can bring more to the table than just a man, right? So I'm really hopeful for the future and what we can bring to the table and how we can help flip the script. And I'm really excited to, especially within our company, to show, to care for our people, so our people are happy, and perhaps that can also help within the industry. It's just small changes will eventually make big changes, right?
It's true. It starts with us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. It's been wonderful getting to know you better, and John, actually meeting you today, because this is the first time that we've spoken.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see what you do in the future. So everybody, check out Erva. If you would like to follow, if our listeners would like to follow you on social media and check out what you're doing, how do they do that?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sara, again for having us. I've been very excited about this for some time. So I'm on LinkedIn, Lisa Sanders. I think my name's hyphenated there, Lisa Sanders Nakahara. Facebook, Lisa Sanders. Instagram, Lisa Sanders. Find me, connect, and let's talk.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me a voice here to just appreciate women in this month and just talk about everything. It's been really fun. It was nice to meet you. And if any of your listeners want to follow us, it's just at Erva Edibles in Instagram, Facebook. I'm on John Macias is my LinkedIn. My doors are always open, and I'm always happy to help anybody, everybody.
Thank you so much. Until
Thank you,
next
Sara.
time, my friends, take care.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.